All right, let's just dive right in. We're going to tackle one of the absolute biggest ideas in how the world works: political realism. But forget the dry, dusty textbooks. Think of this more like a survival guide, a guide to a world where, according to realists, there really are no rules. And to do that, we're going to frame this as a conversation between two different ways of seeing things: the idealist, who really hopes for the best in people, and the realist, who, well, always prepares for the worst. So let's kick things off with the question the idealist is always asking, a question I think is probably on your mind too. Why can't countries just get along? I mean, it seems so simple, right? Why is there so much conflict? Well, the realist has a very short, very blunt answer, and it's the absolute key to their entire worldview. And that word is anarchy. Now hold on, this doesn't mean chaos, riots in the streets, that kind of thing. In the world of global politics, anarchy means something very specific. There's no one in charge. No world government, no global police force you can call. Basically, there's no 911 for countries. When things go bad, you are on your own. This analogy really brings it home. Just picture it. You're walking down a dark street late at night, and you know for a fact there are no police around. Are you thinking about how to make new friends? No way! Your one and only thought is survival. You're locking your doors, you're staying alert. Realists believe that countries are living on this dark street 24/7. Okay, so if that's the reality, the idealist has to ask the obvious next question. If the world is just this big, policeless, dark street, how does any country actually survive? It sounds like it should be constant war, a total disaster. What's the plan here? The realist's answer is what we can call a three-piece survival kit. It's all you need. First, you need power. That's just the ability to make things happen, to influence others. Second, security. You have to keep your borders and your people safe. And third, the national interest. This just means you always do what is best for your own country first. For a realist, pretty much every big decision a nation makes can be traced back to one of these three things. But wait a second. The idealist in us pushes back, right? Surely there have to be some rules. I mean, what about just doing the right thing? What about morality? Can countries really just ignore ethics whenever it's convenient? The realist's answer is, well, it's complicated. They'd say, oh, there are rules, all right? They're just not the ones you think. They're the unspoken rules of power, first laid out by a guy named Hans Morgenthau. And they're pretty tough. They start with the idea that human nature is selfish, and a country's main interest is always power. But the two that really get to the heart of it are Rule 4, which says survival is more important than morality, and Rule 6, which says politics plays by its own set of rules, completely separate from ethics. Let's just focus on that fourth rule for a second, because it's the one that's hardest to stomach. A state cannot follow morality if it threatens its survival. Think about it. Let's say a leader has to lie to an enemy to protect their own soldiers in a war. Now, lying is wrong, we all know that, but for a realist, saving your own people is the higher duty. It is a brutal, cold calculation. And that brings us to that last rule, that politics is its own separate thing. Here's a great way to understand it. A lawyer's first question is this legal? An economist asks, is this profitable? But a realist leader only ever asks one question: does this action make my country more powerful and more secure? That's it. They end up playing a totally different game with a totally different rulebook. Okay, hearing all this, the idealist is starting to get pretty nervous. So, if the whole world is just about power and self-interest, does that just mean it's endless war? How does peace ever happen in a world like this? And here's where the realist's answer might actually surprise you. They would say that peace has nothing to do with trust or friendship or holding hands. Realist peace is built on a stalemate. It's a very tense, very cautious peace that only exists because both sides know that attacking the other would be absolute suicide. Here's exactly how that works. Let's say country A buys 10 brand new tanks. Well, the realist playbook says country B has to go out and get 10 new tanks of its own, just to keep things even. Now, are they friends? Nope. But are they going to attack each other? Probably not. The cost is just too high. This constant matching is called the balance of power, and for a realist, it's the only kind of peace you can actually rely on. The other major tool in the realist toolbox for keeping the peace is alliances. And the schoolyard analogy here is just perfect. You know, the smaller kid makes friends with the biggest, toughest kid on the playground. It's not because they have so much in common. It's for protection from bullies. For a realist, alliances are exactly that: strategic partnerships. They're all about balancing power and surviving. But right about now, the idealist sees a huge hole in this entire theory. Hang on, this feels so incomplete. What about all the good stuff? Countries trade with each other constantly. They work together on science projects. They send help when there's an earthquake. How does your dark street idea explain any of that? And you know what? This is the single biggest crack in the realists' worldview. It's a criticism they themselves will often admit. The theory is incredible at explaining conflict, competition, and the struggle for power, but it has a really hard time explaining cooperation. It can't fully answer why countries are sometimes, well, nice to each other. Okay, let's do a quick lightning round to bust a big myth. After all this, the idealist asks, so it sounds like realist leaders must just hate every other country, right? Is that what this is about? And the realist's answer would be a very firm no. It's not about hate, it's about distrust. Think about a shopkeeper. He doesn't hate his customers, but he still installs a security camera, right? He's hoping for the best, but he's preparing for the worst. That is the realist mindset. It's business, it's not personal. So the idealist says, okay, my head is spinning a little bit. Anarchy, power, balancing, distrust. Is there just one simple image that can tie this whole thing together for me? And yes, there is. It's the ultimate realist analogy, the jungle rule. Think about it. In a jungle, there is no king. There are no police, there's no court system. It is pure anarchy. And so every single animal, every single country has to be strong enough to avoid being someone else's lunch. And that's the key. For a realist, this endless search for power isn't about greed, it's about survival. And so that leaves us, and you, with one last really thought-provoking question. If you accept, even for a moment, the realist idea that the world is a jungle, it really forces you to think, what kind of animal would you want your country to be? The powerful lion? The cunning fox? Maybe part of a strong pack? Realism doesn't give you an easy answer, but it definitely forces you to ask the hard questions.